With the MP Bros, the MP Bros, the MP Bros, the MP Bros. Learn something.
Ladies, it's too much, brother. You never know where it's gonna go. But we're back, though. We're back for episode number 10, MP Bros Podcast, where we come at you guys with knowledge about the mortgage protection life insurance field. And if you're not doing it, you got to find out why. My boy over here, Michael Waranch, top producer. My name's Luis Moyano, in the business for 6 years. I'm a top producer too. Who am I kidding?
Yeah, baby.
Mikey, what's cracking today, man?
Oh, nothing much. I was really happy to hear, though. So for our boy Luis here, when our CEO of Unitrust, Pete Beckman, was running through the leaderboard this week, he was, Luis was like top 5 in the whole company last week. And he says, Luis's name, our official MP bro. And I was like, that's my guy, man. Look at him getting the shout out.
Yeah, it's great, man. I honestly, I'm surprised. And if you guys are watching this, Brandon, Pete, Kara, I'm surprised we haven't had an MP Bros training hosted by just us out there talking and having some fun with it. But we love doing this, and that's not the we're not doing it for the recognition. But don't get me wrong, and I think Mike will agree here. It just feels good when people are like, "Hey, I'm getting so much value from what you guys are putting out there."
Yeah. I don't mind the external validation in any aspect of my life.
As a matter of fact, I could use it more in some other fields in life.
I know, right? And so as joyous as we always like to start this off with that energy of yours, man, today is going to be a little bit more of a serious conversation, right? Because I mean, one of the things that we're going to be talking about is kind of the impact and the why this mortgage protection is so necessary and how it impacts families and kind of experiences that you've had with death claims and the impact that can have on people. So I know it's like we try to keep it light. We're talking about serious stuff with our clients, but serious doesn't have to mean depressing. So do our best to try to balance that out a little bit. But this is an important one today.
But it's real, right? It's real, and the impact of what we do goes so much deeper than just the money we make. We do it. I mean, we're obviously in the business because we got to feed ourselves, feed our family, and put money in the bank and food on the table. But there's the other side of the phone, right? It's the people that are on the receiving end that are signing up for these programs and what the difference is going to make for them. So it's very real. Let's line it up a little bit. We came up with this topic as we're getting ready, and we're like, what would be a good thing to talk about? I'm like, hey, Crystal, babe, give me a topic to talk about. She's like, well, I'm sure you probably already touched on this, but why don't you guys talk about like the actual impact that having life insurance makes? I'm like, we've never spoken about that. That is great. As a matter of fact, thank you. First thing that comes out of her mouth, gold. But love that. So let's talk a little bit about that. Shout out to Crystal. Let's talk a little bit about that because it's the reality of that, right? So what is it that you would put a mortgage protection plan in place, and just explain it in layman's terms?
If you're going to do like a 10,000 foot overview, you die or you have some sort of serious illness, something that requires long-term care, heart attacks, strokes, cancers. I mean, this is what's going to make sure that you don't lose the house while you're dealing with the diagnosis, that your family doesn't go into debt from having to pay your bills after you pass away. And a little side note, you can also use it for your medical expenses. So that's a pretty nice touch as well to make sure that, again, you're not going in debt on that side of the house as well. It's a really special program.
It is, right? So did you know this, Mike? Did you know that the number one reason for the loss of homes, for the loss of foreclosure, is because of a loss of one income, right? Not both parents, but just one income in the household. And it doesn't always mean death, right? I hear that, and the first thing about it is how somebody got fired, somebody lost their job, but it could mean way more than that, right? It could mean a bad heart attack and you lost your income because you can't go back to work, and who knows how long it's going to be. So the number one reason for loss of homes is the loss of one income, and clearly death is going to be part of that. Oh, yeah. We always talk about critical protection period, right? We talk about how that's like the number one plan, if we could say that.
It accounts for the majority of our business.
Easy for many reasons. One, normally it becomes a little more affordable for our older clients to be able to put something in place, but there's such magic to what it's actually going to do. But one of the things that I talk about and that I tell them, because a lot of them are veterans and they'll have VA loans, or not VA loans, they'll have VA disability income coming in,
Right.
or VA pensions coming in. And this is why, if you're an agent, this is why it's so important to jot down the income and break it down, right? You get Social Security, great. What else? You get a pension, great. What else? Or anything else, great. Break it down for me. Let me know, because I want to see the picture of Bill and Jane. And what happens when Bill dies? How much of his income will Jane still be able to count on?
If
Right? Because
any.
sometimes, if any, because most of the times it's none,
Right.
right? If it's a disability that I'm getting, that's gonna go away. If it's a pension, she might be able to get a percentage depending on what's going on and what it is, but they can't always count on that. So you ask those questions. But as a joke, I always say, I'm like, hey, listen, Social Security and the VA, like they do a great job of getting your money, right? But would you say they're the fastest at making changes? Oh no, they take forever with everything. Exactly. Imagine when you pass. If she's going to be counting on any of it, how long do you think it's going to take to be able to adjust for that change to happen and for her income to now be a little more comfortable? Oh yeah. It's just getting them to think about these small things that's going to result into, yes, she's going to need the help. And so that's the reason why I bring that up for critical protection period. But I feel like I'm veering off a little bit. Let's
No,
go
well,
back.
I think it's important to highlight as well. An important question to talk about is when you have a good understanding of the breakdown of their income, you can really hit home of like, look, Luis, if something were to happen to you, could Crystal afford these monthly payments without your income coming in? Right. And they're like, no, it's very impactful because most people are just thinking about the present moment. Right. You're saying, well, after you die, but they're not thinking about the true changes that happen after that, whether it's financially, emotionally, physically, whatever. They're not actually thinking about the changes that happen. They're living life in the present moment. So when you're like, your income would no longer be there after you pass away, and you're telling me that your wife is making $1,100 a month and your mortgage is $3,200 a month, she would not be able to afford those payments. She would lose the house. Am I correct? And they're like, oh my gosh, you can really paint a picture to help people understand how impactful this is in protecting their loved
Is
ones.
that how you say it, Mike? Like, do you say that bluntly straight on the phone? Like, hey, listen, if this happens, that happens, income's gone, she would lose the house. Am I correct? Like, you
Well,
literally boom, boom, boom.
it depends on the person because I do want to mirror a little bit. And if it's like a softer spoken person, I don't want to be that direct. I'll kind of let them lead me there of being
Yeah.
like, well, if I'm hearing correctly, your wife is making $1,100 a month and the mortgage is $3,200. So like, would she be able to afford those payments after you pass away?
Mm.
And he's like, no. And then it's like, then you just feel him like open up of realizing the importance of this.
And that's why he has such a closing ratio, right? Like, literally, that's why. It's not about what you tell them, it's about what they tell you. So, like, you ask them the question instead of telling them. Because I could easily have taken the same scenario, be like, hey, Mike, let me look at this here. I was like, dude, I'm seeing her income's 1,100, your $4,000 go away. The mortgage is $3,200 a month. Dude, there's no way she's gonna be able to pay this. Let's talk about this plan. I just talk,
Mhm.
right? But if we just did exactly what Mike said and asked those questions, be like, do you think if your income goes away, would she be able to handle the mortgage? No, she won't, right? She won't. And so that's why, guys, that's why this is so important, right? So to just give a good basis on that, and I'm gonna hit you with, what, before I even move on, let's go with that same person. You tell him we should be able to, and he tells you, hey, yeah, oh yeah, but I have work insurance. What do you tell him?
Well, there's a couple things. First of all, I want to kind of empower them that they're making a right decision, right? Make them feel validated. I'm like, oh, you're so smart for having that. Work insurance is typically great because it's so cheap, right? But one of the things that's important to note with employer-sponsored plans is that if you lose the job or leave the job, you will lose that coverage, which is why almost all my clients have a private plan so that no matter what happens, you don't have to worry about if you and your family are protected. And I also like to also ask them when they tell me they have an employer sponsored plan before I get into that, I'm like, how long have you been with your employer? And if they're like, oh, it's been a year or 6 months or 2 years, I'm like, yeah, then it's like, it's not really that it's like that stable. It's kind of still new in it. And so that kind of really highlights the importance of having their own private plan outside of their employer one. But if they've been with them forever, I'm like, oh, that's awesome. People don't stay that long at jobs anymore. That's incredible. Just so you know, and then I'll say the same thing about if you leave the job or lose the job, because eventually they're going to retire.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's what I wanted to get at, right? Like I kind of do the same thing. And sometimes I didn't take it a little step farther. I was just like, oh, I ask questions first, but like, yeah, oh, you have work insurance? I'm so happy that you do. We always count it as a bonus. I'll tell you why. Just remind me, how long have you been there? 3 years? Okay, great. The previous job probably offered insurance too, right? And then you switched here. You had that 90-day window before this one kicked in. Yeah, that's kind of how it works. I get it. I used to work for this company. You know how every year they do those reviews? Yeah, one year they came back and they didn't offer any life insurance. I was so pissed. I would hate that to happen to anybody else. Just like that. You're not in control. This company's in control. If they want to, and if they say, you know what, I have 1,000 employees, I want to save $35 a month by cutting all that out for every single employee. That's $35,000 they don't have to no longer pay out. Maybe they don't see the value or they just don't want it. And we have zero control over that. Right? Or like, let's say you go ahead and you're doing so good at what you do, and now you're going to go and become a consultant for the next company. Well, normally when you're a consultant, you're going to be 1099 and have no benefits. There goes this, right? So like you never know what's going to happen, but to rely on having work life insurance, it's just not having any insurance.
I always try to view it as a bonus, right? Because it's typically super cheap. It's decent coverage. You know what I mean? It can be good. It can be horrible. It just depends on kind of the size of the company and how much they care about that. But it's not stable. You know what I mean? It's not guaranteed for life. You're not promised that your family is going to be protected when something happens to you. It depends on your employment situation at that given time. Why would you want to risk that? Take control over it, man. Like put the ball in your court to make sure that when something happens to you, because it's not if, it's when. Like Father Time is undefeated. We will all die. And when that happens, you need to make sure that your family, yourself, the people you care about are protected from your financial decisions that you made throughout your life.
100%, man. That's so. And again, now it goes back to we can't just tell them this. We need them to like understand it, right?
Yeah.
By asking those questions. And you bring those questions up, you share small stories. You know what? One of the best ones that was told to me was, which I think it's a little bit long. I'll say it quickly, but when I was going in the field and sitting down with people, I'll be like, "Oh, you guys both have work life insurance. I love that." I'm like, I'll share a brief story about like one of my very first appointments that I sat with. I sat with this lady. She was in her 60s, and her husband had a huge job. Like he very well off. He did great. Made, I don't know, 300,000. The coverage was like 3 times his salary. So she had like, I don't know, $1 million worth of insurance to work. She's like, I don't need any insurance. I'm good. Like we're covered. He ends up getting sick, gets cancer, doesn't die, doesn't pass away. While he's there, while he's recovering, the company is super supportive. They're there. But when you're making that much money, it usually requires a lot of you. He never was able to fully recover to just be like himself again. And eventually him and the company had to agree to just part ways. And they did. And you know what happened a year later, right? That cancer came back. Now he's uninsurable because he just really had cancer. At least at that $1 million level that he had before, he can get smaller policies. But that's the reason why. Right. So I wish you could just share that with everybody, almost like before going into the appointment. Be like, hey, read this before I come over.
Quick pamphlet for you before our appointment, just so you can really get in the correct emotional state to see the value.
But it's so real, right?
It is. It is.
Dude, we are forced to have car insurance. We're forced. A lot of us, we opt to have phone insurance. Just because we hate paying that $1,000 thing. How many hundreds of thousands of dollars is your house worth? How much are you putting into it every single month? How much more are you paying into interest over this years? Why would you not pay a little bit more to make sure that, God forbid, something happens? You're protecting that equity. You're protecting your family. They have a place to live. I mean, I know that when I hear little kids are involved, it's almost like a no-brainer. Like you need to have that and do not rely on work insurance.
Exactly. 100%.
Right? And then when I feel bad is when they're getting a little bit older, right? When now we're talking to the 60-year-olds, they're realizing that they're not going to be able to count the work. That it's going to be just limited on Social Security and whatever else they might have coming in. Like, what is that going to look like? And if either of you guys pass and half that income goes away, what's that picture going to look like for you? And that's when these plans come in. They're huge.
And kind of that's a perfect segue into the next one. So one of them does pass away, right? So now me, I haven't been doing this long enough to really, I haven't gotten any death claims yet. I've heard of a million people that we're partners with, that we work with, that have. Like, do you have any like stories that you could share about, or how many death claims you've got, or the impact, or how it's been received, or like, I mean, fill us in.
I've been doing this for 6 years, and I think I've easily seen at least 30 to 40 death claims come through. You know, but I mean, I sell a lot of policies a year, right? Like on a constant basis. Like literally, if I'm selling, let's just say 15 to 25 a month, that's a good consistent number. Multiply that over 6 years, it's been a lot. And then I was also helping out clients in Medicare, and man, on that Medicare book of business, you have a lot of elder people. So I've seen it. I've seen it happen. I've seen people call me, and then we'll just make sure that they're lined up and they have all the information they need to be able to call in and have those insurances covered. I have never heard of any of my clients not getting paid out. And I think one thing on my end and doing it over the phone is just that we don't have that one-on-one relationship as much anymore. Like if they ever call me, I'm happy to. But I've only had one or two people call me directly to help them with the claim. And then we'll jump on the phone with the company, make sure they have all the information. And then once they're set, you kind of just pass it on to them. The only one that I can tell you that made a difference was my aunt, right? That not so much that it made a difference. It made a difference for all of them, but that I was there through the process. She moved to Texas. And when she did, she had a small policy on her husband. I don't know, 10, 15,000, nothing major, right? Whatever she could afford. But he ends up slipping in the kitchen, bumps his head on the counter. He's in a coma for about a month and a half, 2 months.
Get out of here.
Eventually passes away, right? And the company took a little bit longer to be able to process because they had to determine like the death, and he had been there for a while. But once they did, it was deemed that he passed away from an accident. So because of that double indemnity clause, that 15K became a 30K or 20K policy, whichever one it was. And then she called me, hey, thankfully, yeah, I got the money. It's so glad that I was able to get it. So that's when I saw it firsthand that it came in. I wish it would have been more of a life changing, but it was able to cover some needs. And like we always say, there's going to be a way to use that and put that to good use. No one's ever going to give it back.
Oh, 100%. And like 30, 20K, 30K, that's not nothing. Like that's a substantial amount of money that, for normal working class people, that's several months worth of income. Several.
Some retirees live on that for a year.
And like, let's talk about the flip side of that, of when you don't have it, right? Like I sold a policy to a guy last week, and I was just telling Luis about this. I called the dude up and I'm talking to him. We're running our appointment. And he keeps talking about his wife. And I'm like, oh, are we going to be looking at protection for both of you guys, or simply just for you? And he's like, no, my wife passed away in January, 2 months ago. And you could hear how impactful that was for him. I mean, he's told me they were married for 47 years. And it's just crazy to hear him say to me, she didn't have any protection like this in place. And it was really hard for me to figure out how to manage financially during that time. And he was still dealing with it. And so he's like, I need to have something like this in place because I have 2 kids and I don't want them to be left in the situation that I was left in. And it was just it was so real for me to hear, like, he really saw the value in this because he lived through not having it.
Yeah.
And so it really, really hit home for me. And you can see both sides of like how incredibly beneficial it can be for a client who has it, and how incredibly negatively impactful it can be when you don't.
Bro, it's just such a different conversation from what we normally have, right? We're usually so upbeat, so energetic. But just like think about that. Just just in this conversation, it brings the not the mood, but the energy down a little bit, right? And that's the impact that is going to be passed on to them. And I feel like the better we do a job at conveying that over the phone, you want to keep it light and all that, but there's going to be your times to be like, hey, listen, this right here is really going to help you guys with the changes of income. And if you guys don't have it, what the impact will be when you do receive that money and how it's going to help you will be very, very impactful for you guys. So, however you want to say it, but the moment we can paint that picture, that's what's going to be able to lead them into saying, yeah, we do need this.
And it's easy for us because we have this script that shows the value for us. We just need to be able to articulate it to them. But
Mhm.
like I write some business and people reach out to me and they're like, how are you doing it? How are you writing business like this? And I care. Like this is not a car or a house or a cell phone. Like this is something that people need. This is a
Mhm.
needed product. Like, don't get me wrong, a house and a car, like you need that kind of stuff. But like, hey, you need here's your house. Give me $350,000, right? You're not getting anything back for it. It's just gonna, like when you sell it, maybe you'll get something back, but like it's not some
Mhm.
random widget. Like people need this protection. And so if I'm not running my, 15, 20 appointments that I've held myself accountable to every day, there are families that are not going to be protected. And someone in their life is going to pass away and they're going to be up a creek without a paddle because I was too lazy to make the extra phone call. I'm not okay with that.
And you see that, like you see the energy that just came right back up because of Mike over here and how he did that. But it just shows and it conveys how much you care. You said those words. You said you care, and you caring shows to the person on the other end of the line. And because you care and you're able to translate what it would mean for them to not have it, it relates to the amount of closes that you're able to get and to put through and sell. Man, it's
But
unbelievable.
if you're in this business and you don't care, you shouldn't be in this
It's a long
business.
business. If you're in this
It's
business for the money, you're not going to be in this business for long.
100%. It's like everyone should feel this way. That's why when people call me and they're like, "Well, how are you staying so consistent?" I'm like, "Because people need me." Like it's really that simple. People need you. You should be making the same amount of phone calls. You should be setting the same amount of appointments. You should be trying your best to protect these families the same way that I do, that Luis does, that Ken does, that Miranda does, the way that all the top producers in this company do. You should be caring as much as they do, and you would see the same results.
Yeah,
It's not rocket science. We are not special. We care and we are driven.
little bit special.
No, we're not. We're not special.
We're There's nothing. No, honestly, I love hanging out with Mike, and he does such killer numbers, and like people look at me, and I do such good numbers. But you have a conversation with us, and we're just people. Like Mike and I, we want to have a good time while we're making this podcast for you guys, and that's what keeps us coming back every single week because we thoroughly enjoy it, and we're cracking up, and we're passing it on. But it's feeding such good content to the agent watching this, right? I'm gonna bring one more thing up about this protecting each other's income on what we used to do and how we used to do it. And then I'm going to go into the next part that we kind of just brought up because you just said something that was really impactful. So when you're looking into both incomes, right? I used to use this fairly often, and this other all-star that is in the business taught me this, but we talk about income protection, right? And who you're sitting with or who you're talking that conversation with, you could easily have that picture right in front of you, and you look into income protection. So, like, let's say he's making $2,500 a month, she's making $1,500 a month. Together, it's about 4,000, right? If you take that 4,000, you can ask them, be like, listen, obviously, for you guys, for 4,000, you're able to live okay, not super wealthy, but you're comfortable, right? But without that, your income only goes down to 1,500, or yours only goes down to 2,500. You would keep the largest of the two. So no matter what, it goes from 4,000 to 2,500. Would things be tight then? Yeah, things would be tight. Awesome. Let me ask you this: if I say, can you live on 90% of what you make right now? Like, would you guys be okay if your income went down to $3,600 every single month? Like, would you be able to? Yeah, we'd be able to. Perfect. Now that $400 right there, that's your target that you can use towards protecting the income for them for a specific amount of time. And that's how we used to get pretty big sales out of the concept. Because now that 10% for them is $400 a month. You take that and you protect their income for 2-3 years worth, and says because you're taking a step back and pacing yourself a little bit more with that 10%, whenever your spouse passes, you're going to have that same income continue to come in for 2-3 years longer, so you can truly prepare. Would that be helpful for you? Oh yeah, totally. And that
course.
was money. So a little harder to do over the phone, right? But same concept. When you're able to see the picture and the income of what's going on, say, hey, help me understand. Like, let's paint a good picture here. Let's have a real conversation. Something happens. How are you going to sustain the mortgage payments on your own? I'm not going to. This is where that need comes in. We beat this one to a horse, man. At the end of the day, care about the families you're dealing with. What we do is serious. The number one reason for families losing their homes is because the loss of an income doesn't just mean job. It could also mean sickness. It could also mean death. And that's why these plans are so important. Anything else you want to add on to this last piece on this here, Mike?
No, no, not at all. It's
Good.
beautifully articulated, man.
Okay. So then you said here, why is it this agents are coming in here and maybe not making the same amount of dials or not putting it in and just kind of like not getting the same results at times that, our industry average should be getting. And that led me to think about expectations, right?
Mm.
And how do we tame down expectations? I mean, some people will come in and be like, hey, I'm going to write $1 million this year. I don't care if I don't know anything about insurance. I'm going to make it happen. Do you know anyone like that?
Yeah, almost every agent I brought in.
Yeah, they're just going to come in and say, like, this is what I'm going to go for, right? But if you look back and you ask them, great, like, where did you come from? And they could be like, oh, well, I had a $40,000 salary. Did you
Right.
make anything above those $40,000 before? No, $40,000. Okay. So now you want to go from making 40,000 a year to making $1 million a year. Let's be realistic and talk about what the difference is going to be for you as a person to be able to shift your mindset and how you operate from a $40,000 yearly producer to a $1 million one percenter.
Right.
One percenter, right? Literally, you're up there. I can't remember what the number is to be able to get you into the 1% of income earned. I think it was 400,000.
I was going
That
to say, yeah, 400 or 450K. Yeah.
right, somewhere around there. And if you're able to make more than that on a yearly basis, now you've gained into that 1% club. But it's a mind shift, right? There's a reason why the 99% of people are not there. So to me, setting realistic expectations are going to be so important for any new people coming in. What does that mean to you, Mike?
Well, it's it's not for me necessarily that the expectation is unrealistic. It's that let's understand what the needs are versus what the wants are, right? You're making 40 grand a year right now and you can live off that. You need 40 grand a year. You want $1 million, but you need 40 grand. So let's figure out, okay, how do we make sure that you are getting what you need? And then, like you and I were talking about before this call, then we can build off of that. Then we can, once you are getting what you need, the growth becomes a lot easier because you can breathe a little bit. Okay, like I have what I need. My bills are paid. There's food in the fridge. There's gas in the car. Like I can live. Now, okay, now what can we do to go from A to Z, right? Because 40K to $1 million, that's some growth, right? That's a lot of change that needs to happen, not just in your day-to-day activity of how many calls you're making and how many policies you're saying. You need to change as a person. You know what I mean? You need to be a different mindset, a different approach, a different discipline. There's a whole, like, who you turn into on that journey, right? That's where the fun lies, they say. It's a
Crazy.
struggle.
Like from 40 to $1 million, you're literally doubling your yearly salary in 1 month. Like, think about that, right? From 40, you have to make over what, 80, 83, $85,000 a month to be able to hit the million. That's a big number.
Say
That's
that
a
again,
big
because I
jump.
think that went under the radar. You need to double your yearly salary every month.
Every month in 1 month.
That is
Come on.
ridiculous to think
Yeah,
about.
guys, you just came out of a $40,000 job looking for a career change, and you want to be the next Michael Jordan. That's amazing. Good for you. Let's not forget how much time and effort goes into building it up. And I'm not saying you can't do it, because
Exactly.
you can, right? You just have to get really, really good. and it's going to take you diving that much harder in. And the harder you dive in, the better you get at it, the more you get your confidence up. I was telling Mike, I think this business is all about confidence.
Yeah.
End of the day, you know, like we have so many people that are going to be like so nice and well spoken and smart and like good. But if you come here and you bring that soft persona to the phone and yeah, how are you? Oh, that's so nice to hear. I
Mhm.
love that. Great. And how's the family? That's awesome. Would you like to talk, mate? No, you we want to talk
You
about.
know, okay,
Okay, we'll call
sorry
you
for
later.
bothering you.
Sorry for bothering you. I didn't mean to call you this early. Come on.
Right.
You're not gonna succeed at this. Like I love that you're like that. I want to be able to just like talk to you every now and then because I feel like I can just lay all my problems on you and you're gonna receive them very well. But you're not gonna have the success that you want. You're gonna have to build your confidence up. But we were talking about this, and what did you say to me, Mike? Confidence is that one thing that you can't fake.
Yeah. You got to earn that, man. That's not the kind of thing fake it till you make it. Confidence, either have it or you don't. And if you don't, you got to build it. You can't fake it.
Build it. But that's it though. But it can be built and it can be built pretty quickly. Like what are you not confident in? If it's about reading a script, we got a problem. If you have a problem reading the script, get out. Like it's
Right.
not for you. It's not for you. It's a script. Jesus, like literally you're following words in a piece of paper. If you can't read that 20, 30 times to yourself, then say it in front of a mirror 20, 30 times and then record yourself once or twice so that you can watch it and be like, ugh,
Yeah, that
what I
sounds
sound like?
weird.
Let me
Do I
fix on
sound
that.
like
You
that?
know exactly. But all of that, everything, read it 30 times, say it in front of the mirror 30 times, record yourself 3 times, less than a day, maybe like 5 solid hours.
Oh my
Like
God. Yeah. If you're committed to it.
if you're committed to it, right? Like, hey, what am I going to do today? I'm going to get better. Great. What am I going to do? I'm going to take this day and I'm going to do exactly this to be able to memorize it. Well, now you did that. You put in your 8 hours into doing nothing but becoming a master of that script. And guess what's going to happen the next day? Your confidence are going to be on steroids, right?
Right.
You're
But
literally going to feel powerful about it.
there's another piece of this, and I know this is off topic, but we're talking about new agents coming in that I think there's a lot of ego involved. And people, like, the best way to get confidence is to kind of like just go through the trials and tribulations of learning about this business, of messing up the script, of losing policies because you messed up the e-app or taking too long in the toolkit to quote numbers. Like, you have to make these mistakes in order to learn so that you can be more efficient to build this. But you have to remove ego. You have to be willing to screw up to grow. Right. I'm a jujitsu guy. Right. One of the biggest phrases we have in there is you don't lose. You either win or you learn. Right.
Yeah.
So you either win or you learn, but you have to be willing to learn. You can't be this guy, F that guy, like forget him. He was just being unkind because he was having a bad day. It's like, no, there's a lot in this call that if we do an autopsy of this call of where it went wrong, there's so much we can learn from if we can just remove our ego to apply to our next call so that now we lost this one. But guess what? Learning from this one that we lost will help us sell 50 moving forward.
100%, man. Often after my calls, and if I don't close it, I was just like, Mike would have closed that, or maybe not just Mike.
He
Somebody
would've.
else would have closed it. Just like, why did I say that? Why
Yeah.
did I explain it so deeply? Why am I getting to think about it? And it comes down to if it's not on the script, try not to say it, right? And simplify it, gamify it, give direct answers. Oh, does that mean this? Yes, as a matter of fact, it does. Don't explain it on why it does. Don't go into this whole like, oh yeah, let me go ahead and tell you about the interest rates on the IUL and how
Well,
it's going to work out.
that's
No,
where you start coming off as unconfident when you need to start over explaining things. If you're confident, they ask you a question, you give a direct answer, you move on.
you move on. Does that answer your question? All right. Will this pay out when I die? Yeah. As long as you make your monthly payments, it will. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Your monthly payments, make them. They'll pay out. Good. What else do you have to? What else do you want to know? Right. So that's kind of that. So guys, like back to the actual topic, right? Setting realistic expectations. Mike just said it. Like just figure it out. Take that time for yourself and write down exactly like what is your survival means. Like what is it that you need to be able to put food on the table, get your kids dressed, go out there, and for some people it's going to be $3,000 a month. Like that's a very realistic number to be able to sustain. So like if you want to do $3,000 a month and you're coming in at a 70% level because you're just starting, how much do you have to write to be able to make that 3,000? You probably have to write a good what, $10,000, right?
Yeah,
Like
about right.
easily, yeah, $10,000, 75% advance. You're looking at 7,500 there. After your comp hit, you're probably around 5,000 minus your lead expense. You're 3,000 right there, right? So $10,000 in 4 weeks is only $2,500. Like it's more than doable, but it's just reverse engineering into what it is that you need, and then from there, it only gets easier. That's the thing about this business, Mike. It's never going to get harder. You know, it's never going to get harder. Like, no matter what, like the competition is not going to be harder. The next call is not going to be tougher than the one that you had prior to. It's never going to get harder than when you're going through the learning, the curve, and getting used to the ups and downs because they're going to happen. You manage those, this business only gets predictable and easier and enjoyable. Then from there, you start passing it on and blessing other people, just like Mike and I are doing right now, giving the advice, you take it in, and let's bring somebody else in and give them the same blessings that you have. I don't know what I would be doing if I wasn't doing insurance right now.
I know what I would be doing, and I did not like it. I did it for a long time, and it was just, there was no fulfillment from it. It was one of those things that I'm talking about where it's like you're doing something, and it's just not really something that like I felt like this is like really needed. You know what I mean? I didn't have that fulfillment from it. I feel so lucky to be introduced to this industry and be able to do what we're doing now. It's special.
It's amazing. Year and a half in the business, this guy, 6 years in the business. I love it. I love being able to talk to insurance about people. It's just, I know like people, like I said this in the past, no one wakes up saying, hey, I want to be a life insurance agent, right? But it doesn't have to be boring. It doesn't have to be tedious. It's not stuffy at all. It's a good living. It's a good product to be able to sell. Everybody needs it. I don't care how old you are, because you never know what tomorrow is going to bring. This is great. This is fun. So let's bless other people and bring them in and let us help you. That's bottom line.
Yes, sir. That's right. Now I'm starting to get anxiety because we're late for our afternoon appointments here. We got families to help, man.
Got families to help. We did chat for a little bit longer in the beginning, but that's okay, guys. We appreciate every single person watching. Michael Waranch, Luis Moyano, episode 10. Please tell us what you guys want to hear so we can have more and more topics coming for y'all. We're going to work on the live one too, right, Mike?
Yeah, baby. Can't wait for that one. You should hear what we talk about off camera. It's ridiculous.
I can't have that on here.
Includes bad knock jokes.
Later, everybody. We'll see you soon.
See you guys.
The knock jokes.
With the MP Bros, the MP Bros, the MP Bros, the MP Bros. Learn something.